OK, time for this morning's paper talk. On the way, we'll take a close look through all the back pages to see what's making the headlines this morning. And here to help us do just that is broadcaster Sophie Nicolaou and the Daily and Sunday Telegraph's Northern football correspondent James Ducker. A very good morning to you both. Sophie, raring to go with the salute as always. Right, let's start with Liverpool, shall we? Their possible sale of the club is still very much making the headlines, and the Times this morning say that the club's current owners, Fenway Sports Group, want bids of at least £3 billion, which is obviously a huge amount of money. James, can you tell us a little bit more about Matt Lawton's story and how they've arrived at this £3 billion figure?
Yeah, it's a huge story and a very interesting development in sort of Liverpool's modern history. They started circulating a sales brochure last month, and Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs are assisting this potential sale process. Obviously, they're looking for, shareholders to potentially come into the club, but a sale, a full sale is still a possibility. I think Forbes valued Liverpool at £3.89 billion back in May, and obviously we all saw what Chelsea got sold for £4.25 billion this year, and I think that's sort of roughly where you'll be getting that valuation from. It'd be interesting to see where they, where a sort of potential buyer comes from, and we're talking about such a small pool of potential suitors here. And I think the Times article, Matt's article in the Times, was suggesting that the most likely, source of a new owner is probably going to come from the US as opposed to like the Far East or the Middle East.
It's interesting, isn't it? They talk about a sales brochure that has been circulating. I guess they didn't put a PowerPoint presentation together. The old school sales brochure. And some folks who are involved in consortium, Matt talks about this regarding Chelsea, were kind of talking about how that this is real. Initially, when the reports came out, Liverpool were looking for investment, but it's shifted gears, hasn't it, this story? You're talking about a fan base of 100 million worldwide. 12 years ago, they bought the club for 300 million. And as much as an American owner might be the likely outcome, right now it's completely up in the air. The other thing, too, for Liverpool fans, that's a little bit confusing, is this constant line from the owners that says they're fully committed to the club. And they've definitely been that, I think, over the 12 years. But you wonder kind of where this is going, and the timing of it as well, ahead of the World Cup. And if the Super League is involved, Matt talks about that as well. Does that mean that the dream of the Super League is over? Is that part of the decision-making process? I don't think the Super League is quite over. And so, for Liverpool fans, they can be excited, but it also approaching this, with definite fear, I think, because we've seen bad ownership previously and what that can do to a club. Hicks and Gillette.
Well, Sophie, you say that the line that is being repeated in this whole process is that FSG, Fenway Sports Group, remain committed to the club. These things can take a very long time, so they sort of have to, or it could be an extended period of turmoil. From what the Times and what Matt Lawton are reporting this morning, do they expect the club to remain in American hands? I know James has already suggested that seems to be the case, but when you look at the Far East, Middle East, and those sort of countries essentially that have come into the Premier League and ownership in clubs, there is a lot of money out there, despite wider economics for the normal people like us.
Yeah, and James is right in the sense of the pool becomes very small, doesn't it, when you're talking about this kind of takeover and this kind of money. And they're talking about Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. In terms of American ownership, the majority of the top 20 of the Forbes 2022 list is made up of American sports teams, Dallas Cowboys being the most expensive team on the planet. You've got the New York Yankees, the New England Patriots, Stan Kroenke's Arsenal, owner, of course, with the Los Angeles Rams, especially that's gone up since the Super Bowl win. Robert Kraft is an interesting one here. In terms of, I follow sports in the United States. And he's definitely the type of owner who might be of interest. They were talking about the Ricketts family as well, who own the Chicago Cubs. Although Matt didn't seem that they would be interested. They have expressed interest previously in Premier League teams, including Tottenham and Chelsea. So it's going to be interesting how this plays out. And maybe John Henry, being an American owner, wants to keep it in American owner hands.
The Robert Kraft line there has certainly got my interest peaked. Do you think what he's done with the Patriots and the way he's built a dynasty there could be very interesting, seeing if any of those NFL sort of owners do look at Liverpool. James, there's a really interesting article by Dominic King in the Daily Mail this morning, and it's a case of Liverpool fans might be dreaming of the unlimited spending that comes with new owners, but they should perhaps be a little bit careful of what they wish for. James, what can you tell us about this? Because it's all very well getting very excited when there might be new owners, new money coming in, but there always has to be a balance. And it's fair to say that the Fenway Sports Group have been fairly astute owners and custodians of Liverpool over the last 12 years.
Yeah, the grass is certainly always not greener. I mean, they only need to look down the East Lancs and look at what's happened to Manchester United under Glazer rule to know that the wrong owners can be catastrophic for a big football club. I'd be very interested. I think the seeds for this were sown in the sort of European Super League collapse, and I'd be, if they got the way, obviously FSG were co-conspirators in that debacle, and it would be very interesting if they got their own way and effectively made sort of the Champions League or European competition a closed shop, which is what they wanted. Whether they would actually now be looking, to potentially sell Liverpool Football Club, I'm far from convinced. The one thing I'd say with FSG is they have put the right people, they have the right sporting directors, the right structure, the right manager in place. You look at, say, the Glazers, for example, and it's been chaotic for a long time, certainly since Sir Alex Ferguson retired. And they have consistently sort of not put the right people in the right place. So there's all those sort of questions. I think you do have to be careful what you wish for. I don't necessarily see an obvious owner coming out from somewhere like, the Middle East, Qatar, the Qataris own PSG, Abu Dhabi own Manchester City. Obviously, the Saudis have now invested in Newcastle. The pool there has obviously been limited. And then you've got someone like Jim Ratcliffe, who, a well-known Manchester United fan who, is now invested in Nice. I think he's backed away from Liverpool. I'm not sure how they would, Liverpool fans would take to Manchester United fan buying the club, but he's pretty focused. He's saying on his ownership of Nice now. So it's a very, very small pool. I think Kraft, as Sophie mentioned, is an interesting one. He's definitely looked at Premier League clubs in the past, but I think an American owner is most likely. I just don't quite know where it comes from.
I really like this article because it definitely is a warning to Liverpool fans. I think the majority of Liverpool fans have been exceptionally grateful of what the Fenway Group has done for their club. They waited 30 years to win the Premier League. I think we tend to forget that football club owners are business people too, right? So they have a ruthlessness to them. But at the end of the day, we're fans. We love our clubs. We want to win. And what they provided Liverpool fans was that winning feeling again. Not only that, but dominance too. And they've also seen, I think they were smart with the sale of Coutinho with that money. They bought Virgil van Dijk and Alisson. They've won the Champions League. They've been to Champions League finals, even, went deep into the Europa League, League Cup, FA Cup. Sports is about winning, and what they've provided Liverpool fans are some phenomenal memories over the last 12 years and brought the club back to where it should be in terms of status of English football. So, yes, be careful what you wish for. I think this has been a good ownership group and a good example of when selling a club, that they've done the right thing. And, of course, hiring Jurgen Klopp changed everything.
Yeah, it certainly did. Let's move on to World Cup conversations. And the Daily Telegraph this morning's got a really worrying headline, actually, ahead of the World Cup, saying homosexuality is damage in the mind. That's the comment of a World Cup ambassador speaking on German television. Khalid Salman, a former Qatar midfielder, made this remark. The interview was then immediately halted by an accompanying official. But Sophie, it's really worrying, isn't it? And given all the conversations we've been having around sort of staging the World Cup in Qatar and what that means for LGBTQ plus supporters, this is a real worry.
An exceptionally massive worry, because if folks are saying this kind of stuff in public, then what is being said in private and what is happening behind the scenes as well. These articles are really important. We have to continue to write them. I wish that we had been doing a lot more of this over the last 10 years. And these kinds of comments literally 12 days, 11 days before the World Cup are very unsavory. It doesn't help also when people in our own country, like James Cleverly, is telling people to be less gay. And the Lionesses have been very vocal. And Sue Campbell has come out and said, well, we need to be careful, you know, kind of we have our own problems in our country. Every single country has problems. But this has been an ongoing issue, and these comments continue to come out. And it's quite frightening, actually. And I think it's making people think twice about whether or not they're going to be going to Qatar and supporting this World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, the entire, picking up from what Sophie said there, this entire World Cup has been heading to a situation like this. It's a scandal that, you know, they even got they got the tournament in the first place, and you've now got Mr. Self-Interest himself, Sepp Blatter, FIFA president, who presided over the entire mess, coming out and saying it was the wrong decision, and you know, the state is too small to host the tournament. I mean, again, he's still missing the major issues here, that this is a state with an appalling human rights record, that treats the LGBT plus community appallingly, that oppresses women. The treatment of workers' rights are devastating, and we've only seen what's happened in the building of these stadiums. And I think we will see sort of headlines like this become a lot more common over the next month. I think there's nothing we can do about the tournament now. It is here, and we have to deal with it. But I do think it's interesting that I'm sure Sophie would agree that there might be an opportunity on the flip side to really, really raise awareness about the situation in this country. And you do just hope that people are prepared and willing to speak up. And a bit concerning for me that the stories emanating that, you know, fans are going to be paid to post nice social media comments about the state and things like that. I think things like that are worrying. I think you hope people speak their mind, but equally, I think some people over there will be very concerned about doing so.
Sophie, you're headed to the World Cup. As a member of the LGBTQ plus community, have you got any concerns, any worries about being in Qatar?
You know, I kind of I had some serious conversations with my family, in a nutshell, today, to be honest, who have concerns about me going, and they're very serious conversations. And I think it's a sensible thing to do, to have those conversations with, you know, the people that you trust. And has it made me think twice? I was uncomfortable with so much of this beforehand, and those conversations today were pretty serious in light of these continued outbursts or comments from people. It doesn't make you feel warm and fuzzy, does it?
No, it certainly doesn't. In terms of matters on the pitch, Gareth Southgate is naming his England squad tomorrow, but according to The Sun, Reece James will not be going, and that's already been communicated to James. James Ducker. Can you tell us a bit more about this story? Because we know Reece James got injured a couple of weeks ago and was really hoping that he might be able to sort of have a miraculous return for the knockout stages, but that doesn't look like that's going to be the case.
No, it doesn't, sadly. I think it was always going to be somewhat optimistic to think that Reece James would make this tournament. I mean, he had a scan yesterday, which was encouraging. You know, certainly strengthened Reece's belief that he could be back in time for the knockout stages. You know, and he's back on the grass at Cobham. But you know, it's one thing being back, you know, on the grass. It's still a long way from being match fit and match ready for, you know, a tournament. I think I think, Gareth Southgate's obviously had, a number of concerns and issues around injuries, particularly to defenders. And I think we've seen so many past tournaments where England have taken players who were not fully fit, and it's never quite worked out. I could understand him maybe gambling on one player, who's fit, a Calvin Phillips or a Kyle Walker or something like that. But I think there's too great a risk. And I think the one upside is they're pretty blessed at right back. Kyle Walker's obviously, another concern and issue there. But Kieran Trippier's in fine form for Newcastle. And obviously there's Trent Alexander-Arnold as well.
James, thank you very much. And Sophie, you too. Brilliant stuff. Thank you so much for joining us and giving your great insights as ever on Paper Talk this morning. Appreciate it.